lovely souls. My name is Jackie, and welcome to the Raven Rabbit Wellness Studio podcast. I'm an enrolled member of the Washoe Tribe of California, Nevada. I have always been deeply connected to the unseen spiritual world since I was a child. I wouldn't say that my spiritual awakening can be pinpointed to one specific date, time, or event, but rather it was a natural unfolding over my lifetime. And I want to share that journey with you to let you know that your spiritual awakening is divinely guided. If you want help with self-worth and self-doubt, then this is the place for you. I took baby steps to change my life and heal from anxiety, depression, and self-doubt. Ultimately, I built Raven Rabbit in my quest to help others like you do the same. I am a metaphysical minister, energy healer, and intuitive coach. In this podcast, I draw on metaphysical principles, I read energy, and I intuitively guide our conversation with the holistic, indigenous, spiritual approach to life, healing, and happiness. Stick around to explore the unseen, navigate metaphysics to live your life to the fullest, be the happiest version of yourself, and to deeply heal from what holds you back. Hello everybody, welcome to episode 20. This episode, I'm so excited to dive into this. I'm really going to start sharing my spiritual thoughts and beliefs. I wasn't sure how to go about doing that. I've really been thinking from an academic teacher standpoint of what you need to know about metaphysics, universal laws, all of those types of things, which are in my past episodes. They're there for you to refer to if I bring up something here that maybe you want to know a little more about. I'm sure I might have covered it briefly somewhere else, and we'll always go deeper. But this episode is about one of my favorite topics ever. Orcas. I love orca whales. I have loved them since I was a child. They have always been my favorite animal. And I did a whole episode about animal spirit guides. So, they're definitely a part of my life and have always been. So with that, I want to do our invocation for this episode 20. Dear Creator, please make me a pure, incorruptible channel of loving, healing, divine presence as I speak, and provide me with all the protection, guidance, and wisdom I need. Only the divine and healed are to be present with us today. And so it is. So this is episode 20. Are orcas evil or enlightened? And orcas have been really in the news lately with them going after the boats. And I've been totally following those stories of the orca uprising and all the native artists who've been beating and inspired by the orcas who are doing that. I think it's amazing. So a little backstory. As a child, I loved orcas, and I still do. I had the stuffed animals and pictures, just everything. I was obsessed with Free Willy, because at the time I didn't know animal entertainment was not the best choice, but I loved Free Willy. I loved going to SeaWorld, because then when I was a child, I did not know any better. Any orca books I could get my hands on in the library, the eyewitness books, I loved them. I also loved any videos as a kid that went over that, because I think there was eyewitness shows too, and we got to study that in school, and anything that had to do with orca whales, I was paying attention in school. I loved it. So that's my backstory on why I love orcas so much. And I always thought it was interesting too, because natives usually have, lots of people, not just natives, they have an animal they're drawn to. That has always been mine. And I guess it's progressed over the years and stuff, and you definitely have your animal guides that come in and out or stay with you, but that is my number one. So about a year ago, I did a field trip with students, and we went to SeaWorld. I didn't pick that. It was chosen. I was kind of sad because I hadn't been to SeaWorld since I watched Blackfish, which deeply upset me. So I was like, no way. I can't support that. That's not my thing. And so, but I had a son since then. I'm like, well, the field trip, they let me bring my son, and he was 2. And I was like, it'll be a good experience for him to see the animals, and he loves it. But when we did go to the Orca tank, I was like sad, and my partner chaperoned that day too. And when we got home, he was like, are you sad? And I'm like, I'm sad. He's like, the Orca tank made me sad. I said, me too. Like, we were really saddened by that trip, and it really made me start thinking about why are orcas even here? And I'm not talking about the sense of like the 3D world. We know the backstories of these orcas and how they ended up in those tanks. You could watch Blackfish. You're going to find out how they got there, whether they were bred there or captured. So there's that's the 3D world of why these whales are there. I was asking a deeper question about why are these orcas even here in this life? Why did they choose this incarnation of being in this tank? So it made me start thinking about 2 different questions, because the 2 questions that I have, I'll share in a second. So I had thought about that a lot, and I'll start ruminating about things and think about things over and over again, and weird things will spark that, and I'll have these long trains of thoughts, and sometimes I meditate on them even. So earlier this week, I was with my partner. We were in the hot tub. We were talking about something, and we remembered that experience at SeaWorld, and I told him, there's something I've never shared with you about the orcas, and I've been really thinking about it lately. And I had the question of, were orcas evil? And then you could say evil. Were they serving some kind of evil? Were they evil people in a past life and did awful things, and then being there is their karma? Or are they super enlightened beings who are there to teach us humans a lesson because we've got a lot of things to learn? So we were in the hot tub talking about that. And so I explained it all. So 1, are the orcas evil or have karma or have to pay a bad debt and like learn some kind of lesson from a past life? And so the only way to do that in the 3D world possibly would be, we're going to send you to be bred or captured, and you're going to go into an orca tank for the rest of your lives. Because if you think about orcas and how intelligent they are, that's just torture. You're in a small tank, and it's a tank. You are not in the beautiful wild ocean, and you have to sit there and think about whatever lesson you're supposed to learn while you're there. I have no idea what types of bad karma or evil these beings might have done in the past, but to be sent there seems like a prison sentence. And you would have to sit there and think about your lesson and what you did in that past life to end up there. And I was like, maybe they were just evil, awful beings in the past, and now this is their punishment, is to be sitting there. But then when you see some of the whales, some of them they're beautiful, they're majestic. You have your angry ones who clearly should not even be anywhere near that. But then it made me started thinking about, the flip side of that. What if orcas are super enlightened beings who make the most ultimate sacrifice of, yes, I'll be captured or bred and put into those tanks so that the humans down here can learn their lessons they're supposed to learn through their lives by watching me there. They're willing to take that role and educate us humans on so many topics like humanity, peace, love, free will. Like, there's so many things you can learn from an orca watching them in the wild and in those tanks. And maybe they're just so enlightened, they're there to teach us a lesson and to also inspire us, because also watching them, even though they're in those tanks, you just cannot help but they're just so beautiful and amazing, and you stare and you become so enthralled with them. So I was like, it has to be either one. Either they're beings making up for something in the past, and they're there, and you think about how smart orcas are and how long they live. They could be there for 30 years or more in those tanks if something else tragic doesn't happen. But they could be there potentially for a long time, because orcas live to be 60 to 100 years old in the wild. Or they're just the most enlightened beings in the whole wide world who can take this ultimate sacrifice. Because when you think about a soul's life, 60 years down here is an eternity. It's your whole life. But in the soul's life, when you look back on it, it might not be that long, because we have so many incarnations and have these huge soul lives. So I think about orcas as orca people. And I was doing some research. There was this book I used to read in my class, and now I'm second guessing it a little. I had gotten it while I was in Washington, before I knew a lot about Native literature and the importance of Native literature being written by Natives. But there was this book I loved. It's called Storm Boy. I'm going to put it in the show notes. You do have to be wise about books you choose that are based on Native American culture. You need to find out if the author is Native, if it was inspired by a past story, if it's a oral tradition story or not. But I did some research on Storm Boy. It was not, unfortunately, it was written by a non-native. And it's a mesh. It goes into that intertribal space where the author says, it's inspired by Pacific Northwest Indians. Well, you have to start thinking about, well, what is a Pacific Northwest Indian to you? There's so many tribes. We have over 570 tribes in America. So this was a pan-Indianism story, but the point to me is really important, because when you think about a metaphysical aspect, the story itself is really inspiring, and all I care about, and at this aspect, this is not to teach Native history in any way, is the beauty of orca whales. So the whole point of the story is the young boy, there was like a storm happening, he gets pushed into the ocean or whatever, he's in the ocean, and he gets taken in by the killer whale people. And he has a spiritual journey. And the orca people take them into their home and their space, and they teach him the orca ways of being and songs and all of this stuff. And he comes back to ashore, and as the people there presumed he might have gone missing or had passed away because of this storm, he wasn't. He was come back a new, changed person. And so that's where I get the idea of, orcas are just so enlightened. They have so much to teach us. And if you went into specific tribal stories, there's very huge respect and importance on orca whales. And we have Native activists and tribes working to save our whales that are in places like SeaWorld and other captivity places. So there's other documentaries I've watched on that. The names are not coming to me. But that's where I started getting the idea of, they're just so enlightened that they would make that ultimate sacrifice to teach us humans something important by going there. So those were my two thoughts. Are orcas evil, or are orcas super enlightened? And so I shared that with my partner the other night in the hot tub, this whole story. And he could tell I'd thought about it for a long time. And he's like, I'm gonna rattle you a little. What if they're both? And I just mind blown. He's like, what if they're both? What if they're both living there with both of those in a balance? He's like, you're forgetting about the balance of the world and nature. What about natural balance, yin and yang? And I just started thinking even deeper about the issue, well, it would make sense. If you just have a bunch of orcas in a tank who were all evil, what are they going to learn while they're there? They're just going to be angry. They're going to be upset. There's no balance. They're not learning anything on their end. They could, possibly. Then if you just have a bunch of enlightened orcas in that tank, who are they enlightening? Who are they helping? So then he thought, what if they're both there and they're paired up just so between the one who's serving whatever it is, karma, bad debt, whatever that negative thing may be that they're there for. But you pair them with a super enlightened orca Now you have yin and yang, and they're there to balance and learn. At the same time, making us as humans learn from watching this whole issue unfold in our lives of capturing the orcas, putting them in these tanks, this very unethical issue. But at the same time, they get to grow. So the enlightened orca gets to teach. The orca who's there to pay debt or whatever it might be could hopefully learn something from the enlightened orca and learn their soul's purpose and reason. So now I believe that the orcas that are in captivity, they are of both beings. They're the ones paying back debt. You could say evil. I just couldn't think of a better word for it. Orcas that needed to grow and evolve with orcas that are already super enlightened and willing to take on that challenge. And that made me feel just so inspired. And I think that's being modeled to us. And we're seeing that in the animal world. And then we have to learn our lesson of power, greed, control, capitalism. There's so many things to learn over these whales that are in captivity that should not be there. So I'll put that book in the show notes. To go a little bit further, I told you I do education work as well. I do all my metaphysical minister work, intuitive coach, life coach, spiritual coach, but I'm also a teacher by trade. And I have a doctorate in curriculum and instruction. And it's super important to be vetting the books that we read to our families and to our students. And so I did a little search on this book. I had bought this book, Storm Boy, when I was super young. And we were up in Washington, so I assumed, what most would assume is that, I think it was like a state park or something, that they would carry a native written book. However, that was not the case, unfortunately. The book Storm Boy is written by, let's see here, Paul Owen Lewis, and he's a non-native, and I am on the American Indians and Children's Literature's website, and this website's by Dr. Debbie Reese. She vets and reads and analyzes children's books on Native literature. So it's a big deal. And this particular blog post was from 2016, where it says, "Where do you shelve Native American stories?" And she gives an example and brings up this Storm Boy book, which goes into pan-Indianism and just lumping Indians as a whole rather than our specific stories. And basically the suggestion here is that this book, because it's not specific to a nation or to a tribe, that it should ultimately be shelved in a fiction category. And just be aware of that and think about it. Just be aware. So I don't believe in book banning or anything like that. You just have to be aware of what you're teaching and why you're teaching it. When I've taught this story, I've always had specific reasons, and I've always liked to go deeper into who are Pacific Northwest Indians. It could be a good opening because it's really general, but you got to get deeper and get into the specific nations. In her blog post, Debbie Reese's blog post, I think she wrote how many nations off of the Bureau. Yeah, here's a list. She didn't give a number, but there's 570 tribes across the nation, so that are registered. So there are a ton of tribes to learn from. This could just be an anticipatory set book to get you going. I will give a link to it, to the blog post, to help you think, because maybe you have other Native books and you need to be thinking about where you're shelving them and how you're presenting them. Very important. And for the context of this story, where I think about natives, where I think about metaphysics, you think about our animals. And maybe this is something coming up in your mind. You're not wild or crazy. I have these thoughts. I've been thinking for years, trying to decide whether orcas were evil or enlightened. And then we have the orcas now, the uprising of orcas who are capsizing boats and it's like I started thinking more, oh, they're enlightened. They're raging against what has happened to them as an orca population because they're intelligent. So that's my 2 cents on the orcas. They're definitely both. Just like with anything, we always have our balance, and we're sent here on our soul's journey, like many metaphysicians say. I'm a soul. I'm a spiritual being here having a 3D world experience. Same thing with all of our animals and plants, and the best way I can think of, like stone people, all of our spiritual being things, they're here having a human experience for a reason, whatever that may be. So, hopefully I got you thinking about what is your spiritual soul's experience here on Earth. Or maybe you're going to start thinking about others like I do. Like, what about the orcas? What about those rocks? What about those birds? Just get you thinking about something. Thanks for listening to my podcast. I'm so happy you're here. I'm so happy to be sharing my very interesting thoughts that I have. Because sometimes I'm like, people don't think about these things. What am I doing? But they do. They indeed do. So, if you liked the podcast, I really encourage you to rate it, to share it. I'm just so happy to be talking to you and having you here with me, talking about these really exciting things. So, I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and thank you for listening. Thank you for listening. Expand the life, healing, and happiness of others in your field by sharing this episode. You can get more of my content and other helpful tips by following Raven Rabbit LLC on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Be sure to comment on Spotify and answer the episode's question so I can keep creating content you love and desire. Thank you so much.